Rolling, okay, rolling, and the audio for your camera is rolling, and that's rolling.
All right.
Okay, this is Traveller's World, where every episode takes you to new destinations and uncovers incredible travel stories. I'm your host, David Barrett, and today we're joined by an extraordinary traveller who has embarked on some truly remarkable adventures. Let's get started. Presented in partnership with Travel Daily News Asia Pacific, welcome to this episode of Traveller's World. Thanks for being with us here today at Traveller's World, part of the Extraordinary Travel Festival. You've travelled a lot. You've got many stories. Can you share one of your most outstanding travel experiences that you've had?
Thank you first for inviting me. It's really nice to be here. Obviously, I've had every trip is a story or many stories. But if I was to select just one, it would be my first transcontinental trip. In 1989, we drove a Land Rover, which we bought in England, from Poland to Kenya, a trip which took 9 months. And at the time, it was not that easy to do, for various reasons, visas and logistics. The roads in Africa were very poor, so there were lots of challenges that made the trip very memorable.
At the festival, there's some people who've travelled all 193 nations. Have you travelled extensively?
Yes, I have actually not only travelled the 193, but I've done the 193 twice, at least twice in every country.
Oh my goodness. And what would be your recommendation of the top most favourable destination that you've ever been to?
This is a question that we travelers get asked often, and I'm sure if you ask them, they'll tell you the same thing, that it's actually a very easy question, impossible to answer. It's very difficult to pick up a country. So what I'm planning to do, based on, once I've traveled to every country 3 times, I want to summarize and make a ranking of the countries, various aspects, the people, the landscapes, the cities, the economy, the ease of travel, and so on and so forth. And one of the reasons for the book is I hope it will answer me the question, which is my favorite country, because I don't know that.
What will be the title of the book?
I don't know yet. The rough title I have is Ranking of 193.
And have there been places that you've been to where you felt unwelcomed or you felt unsafe and you would not advise people to go there?
Mm-hmm. Yes, there is obviously, if you're inexperienced, there are some countries that you'd rather not start with, that are more sort of difficult, and it's better to go there once you've got some experience, right? But in terms of a country that I felt unwelcome, there was the first time I went to Guinea Conakry. I've been there 3 times, but the first time I went, I felt very unwelcome. And I was there. It was a short trip, but within that short period of time, like 2 or 3 incidents I had that were not really something that you'd expect in Africa. And then when I left the country, I read somewhere that it's one of the most xenophobic countries in the world, which just confirmed what I had experienced. However, the next time I went with some apprehension, and I found the people fantastic, very welcoming. So it's I guess it depends on the day, on your own personal mood, on who you meet, and that can affect your impression of the whole country. That's why I chose to go the second time and the third time, just to make my ranking more objective.
Fantastic. And what would you say would be the destination you would choose to be home, other than where your home is based at the moment?
This is a very interesting question because, I'm half Polish, half Kenyan, so I lived in both countries. I've also lived in other European countries. And Actually, I feel I could live almost anywhere, and an interesting thing is that the United States, a state in Polish, states is called stan. So if I had to choose one state to live in, and I had to choose just one to live for the rest of my life, it would be either Uzbekistan or Tajikistan, or so it would be those places rather than the US. But I could really live pretty much everywhere.
For foodies, what's the tastiest destinations?
Wow, yes, that's a great one. Obviously, Thailand, where we are, is very high on my list, as is Indian food. But the food which is underrated, I feel, undeservedly so, is Peruvian. The Peruvian cuisine is really, really excellent. And every time I go there, I salivate, with the anticipation.
What's your style of travel? 5-star luxury hotels, backpacking, or homestay? Where do you get the most experience?
My favorite is by far backpacking, and I travel solo, without a group or without a guide. And my favorite style is going transcontinental, so starting at the one end of a continent and finishing at the other end, or maybe combining two continents to travel through. And I travel by buses, public buses, minibuses, sometimes taxis. Shared taxis or motorbike taxis, sometimes by boat.
Solo travel, don't you get lonely at times? Is that the downside of travel?
Not for me. It could be. It depends on the personality, I guess. But three things I could answer that. Because one is I like my own company. I don't want to sound selfish and egoistic, but I always travel with myself, and I give myself enough entertainment. Like even waiting for a bus to fill up in Africa, I will do something to like for example, I try to remember all the words I had learned in Mandarin. And I was jotting them down, and the 5-hour wait felt like 15 minutes, right? So that's one part of the answer. The second part is, you never travel alone really, because I use public transport. So I'm with people, right? And
but what about family? They must see you so infrequently, in that it must impact on your family relationship.
you think so, yes,
Yeah.
but there is.
Do they encourage you? Do all your family members say, hey, go
Yes,
for that 193, third time round?
Right, yes, absolutely. My kids are grown up, they're independent, they've got their own children now.
Are they
So-
chasing 193?
No, but interestingly, both of them have been to about 80, 90 countries of the 193, so, and they travel independently, my son especially with his wife. They do a lot of travel without me, and sometimes we go together as well. But so and I guess when they were born, we were traveling, all of us. So travel seemed quite natural, and I used to be a management consultant. So even when I was not traveling for fun, I was traveling with work, with clients. So the fact of me not being home every night for dinner is sort of something that in our family became a norm rather than an exception.
I'm an old man. I've travelled a bit, and I looked. I've got 5 passports in my life. How many passports have you got, having travelled every nation in the world twice, and now you're on the 3rd round?
I have exactly 39 passports.
Oh my goodness.
And then including the 3 that I use currently. But one is expired, so I basically change my passports every year, sometimes once every 1.5 years. Wow. But I'm fortunate because I have dual nationality, so I have Kenyan and Polish passports, which Kenyan is very useful in Africa, for example. But in Poland, it is also allowed to have 2 passports simultaneously. So this gives me more freedom, and I don't have to check in. But every time I go to the passport office, my local passport office in Warsaw, they are very happy to see me. Oh, you haven't been here for a while. What happened? Have you stopped traveling? So I have this VIP treatment in my local passport office.
Airports and airlines, what's your relationship with them?
you know, I prefer going overland for one, but
But you can't always do that.
no, especially if you're changing continents and there is no body of water between them. But you know, I like airlines for the following reasons. One is compared to when I started, and you know, my first flight was in 1969, when flying was different from now. You know, it's more elite and special. You know, with the advent of low-cost airlines, air travel has become very cheap, very accessible. You know, you get flights every day, sometimes a few flights a day from a destination to a destination, whereas, you know, 50 years ago it was once a week or once every 2 weeks, you know, for that. And also, you know, I hope the airline executives will not take the wrong cue from what I'm about to say, but I feel that airline prices haven't increased as much as hotels, for example, or perfumes, because in 1970s, a flight from Warsaw to Nairobi, the capital of Kenya, would cost about $600, $700. The same it costs today. And if you compare that to a hotel, I remember the first time I stayed in London and paid for the hotel was in 84 or 85. And I could get a room in a middle class hotel for £8, £7 and a half. I felt that was very expensive. Today, you can't get a bed in a shared room in a hostel, you know, with 15 other people in your room sharing for less than £50. You know, when I don't really see the justification, and I feel it's a bit of a rip-off. Airlines, I do not feel it's a rip-off.
So with the younger generation that have an aspiration to chase 193, counting the countries, do you need to be super rich to do this?
Not at all. I mean, it depends really on your degree of accepting discomfort. You know, so my tolerance for discomfort is huge. You know,
have you had a lot of discomfort in your life?
Oh yes, you know, and I don't try to avoid it. You know, I think it's part of the travel. You know, so I sometimes, as I said, I'll stay in hostels rather than hotels. Oh, the reason also being that you tend to meet more interesting people and you connect with them very quickly. You know, you open up quicker. If you come with your backpack, you're sweaty. People ask you where you're from, where you're going, how long have you been on the road, and you know, and you just start chatting. Sometimes the conversation goes really deep within the first half hour, 1 hour of your meeting, which is not necessarily the case if you stay in the top 5-star hotels with business people.
Could you ever see yourself on an American cruise doing the Caribbean?
Yes, I could. Yes, I haven't done it yet, but you know, one of the options I'm thinking, you know, because I'm 59. And I don't know.
So the 60th birthday has to be somewhere quite remarkable then, doesn't it?
I don't really celebrate birthdays that much, you know. Okay, it's an important day, I guess, but there is a day in the calendar which to me is even more important than my birthday, and that is the day I quit work, becoming financially free, and that's the 29th of May. So I celebrate 29th of May more so than my birthday, which, you know, I didn't really have much influence on when I was born.
And what did you do to celebrate 193, that 193rd nation that you visited? Did you celebrate?
No, not at all, no. It's something that I had planned. You know, I had struggled getting the last country's visa, which was Equatorial Guinea, you know, in 2009. And prior to that, this was a very difficult country to get a visa for. But so I got the visa, I traveled, I came back, and I continued traveling, you know, and there was no big celebration. Maybe I'll celebrate the third country, you know, the third time, because I've been inspired by things what I see in the ATF, you know, people actually bringing their friends and celebrating, and yeah, so I thought it's a nice idea.
Do you post your travel experiences on social media? Can we follow you and your adventures?
No.
Wow.
Not only do I not have Facebook or Instagram or anything else, not WhatsApp, but for 25 years of my travel, I didn't take a single picture. A single picture. You know, because at some point, you know, the photography, you know, carrying a heavy lens and so on, and then we had these films in rolls, and I would come back and develop them, and then you have to segregate the pictures and arrange them and whatnot. And I was backlogged, having traveled a lot. So I hadn't done last trip or last 5 trips, and I'm already bringing more roles to develop. So I very quickly switched to digital. Although I'm not very good with technology, I don't like. But here I felt, that this was going to improve my life. But then I still felt that once I take a camera out and I'm trying to photograph somebody or some site, that camera sort of blocks my view, and it creates a barrier between me and whoever it is I want to photograph, right? So I said, no, I don't want to do that. And also, many people will tell you, well, I want to capture this because I don't know if I'll ever come back here again. My assumption is always, of course I will come back here again. So why do I bother, And if I really want to look it up in the internet, you can find pictures of everything and much better quality than what I could produce. So why bother, right?
Great philosophy and approach. Yeah. Having travelled to 193 countries twice, do you think that's changed your perspective of life and people?
They say that traveling is like a university of life, right? And there was a time I actually penned down while waiting for a bus, one of the buses to fill up. I took a piece of paper and a pen, and I said, okay, what did it mean in my case? What did I actually learn? And I actually penned it down. And I misplaced the sheet, in the travel somehow, which one day I'll recreate. But it teaches you a lot, not only just about the geography, the people, the languages, the cultures, but also things like humbleness. You go somewhere. I've been to places, and sometimes people in authority who will accept that I come into their country, or something you're dependent on people, and they'll be putting up barriers which don't make sense. And they say, well, it's everywhere like that. I say, well, it's not. I've been, many places, and it's not like that. And and I know that this approach just gets you deeper and deeper into trouble. You just have to forget about what you've seen, and that you've seen more than the person that is controlling you, and you have to accept that buses don't run on time. And so one example in Africa, especially in Africa, you can book a bus from A to B, and it's supposed to leave at 6, but it doesn't leave until 1 p.m. And then by 5 o'clock it starts getting dark. So before reaching B, the driver decides he's no longer traveling any further, right? And he just tells you that this is it. We are not going to B. And my initial reaction was, the European style is protest. I mean, I paid the ticket. It's a service. I demand to be taken where you promised. And I saw that this has no effect. So now I just tell them, okay, fine. You just have to find me a place to stay where you're going to drop me off. And they find this is a good deal. Both sides are happy. So instead of fighting it, you just go with it.
My last question, because you're so well travelled, what's the view when you travel around the world of this climate change and sustainability that we're faced with? Is there global awareness, or people just ambivalent to climate change?
It obviously depends on where you are. Like I was shocked, for example, that Bhutan, which is a small country in the Himalaya, they have minerals which they refuse to mine to preserve the environment, which stood in sharp contrast to Canada, which I had always looked up, to like they are the ones leading the field, So but the place where you particularly feel this is the island nations of the South Pacific. Because, one thing I do, people always ask you, where are you from? So one day I'll be saying, I'm from Poland, and then the next day I'll be saying, I'm from Kenya, just to see what people's reactions are, if there's any difference. And I was shocked because when I say I'm from Poland, people will associate, the elderly will associate with Lech Walesa or Pope John Paul II. The young generation will be Robert Lewandowski. But in the South Pacific, they said Poznań. I said, Poznań? Poznań is a city in Poland. Why Poznań? Because the climate change conference is happening there. So this is really, some people on the streets are aware of their prime minister going to this conference to fight to preserve that they don't lose their island. So it's really very impressive. And in Africa, we it depends again on the country, but many countries are now introducing like a ban on use of plastic bags, plastic what, and this has really cleared some of the countries. So yeah, it depends. It's patchy, right? And in China, for example, many years ago, I think maybe even as far as 10 years ago, I hired a scooter to go around one of the cities, and all the scooters were electric, 10 years ago, so this thing of the smoke and so on, which was, polluted, is clearing up even in China, as far as I can tell.
Great, there's hope for our future. Thank you so much for meeting us today at Traveller's World, part of the Extraordinary Travel Festival. You can catch our conversation on Travel Daily News Media Asia Pacific, and keep travelling, keep inspiring, and I suggest you start taking photos.
Thank you. Cup and come.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Cut.